Okay. Well, it's great to see everybody joining, and welcome to this webinar. I've had the great fortune to be able to work with our panelists and get to know them and prepare for this session. And I couldn't be more excited to spend the next hour with everybody. Again, everyone can introduce themselves on the chat and share some questions. We'll do our best to get to as many of those over the next hour or so. I think to get started, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement from where our organization is based, which we acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Whatnot peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto, where we're based, is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And I think it's just important to give that land acknowledgement for the great land that we all work and live. So welcome to this webinar. And I'd have to say, as a panelist, this conversation is not just about today or this very important month. It's really something that we can think about every day, and how to celebrate and share Black stories and voices, and celebrate these stories and voices every day. As a gay entrepreneur myself from a really small town, it has to be acknowledged that it's a huge privilege to be able to host this panel, but also the rights, the freedoms that I enjoy every day as a gay person is started from a trans Black woman that fought for all of us. And so it's something that I'm very grateful for, and it's something and a story that we should be celebrating among so many other stories. So thank you to Anissa and Diavin for letting me host this panel and giving me the privilege to be able to have this really important conversation. And I hope that if we get anything out of today, it's something, there's so many things that we can be doing, not just today and this month, but every day throughout the year. And it's something that we can all lean into in so many different ways. For those that are familiar with 10,000 Coffees, as a diversity-owned company, we've been thinking about diversity from the start, from the first line of code that we created. And on a month like this, we get to really think about how we celebrate and share Black stories, not just in February, but year round. And 10,000 Coffees as a networking and mentoring platform, so much of that is critical to advancing and sharing and celebrating Black employees and voices year round. So for those that aren't familiar, we launched an amazing ebook, which Diavin and Anissa are both in. So I encourage you to all check it out and share it. And the goal of that is to think about how you can create year-long inclusive action at your organization. And what we're going to discover today is really dive into some questions on how we celebrate not only Black History Month, how we elevate Black and underrepresented talent groups through things like mentoring, networking, and sponsorship, and also how to create a culture of allyship. And I think allyship, which we'll explore a lot today, is so much more than just this month. It's something that we all have to find ways to commit to year round. So with that, we couldn't be more excited at 10,000 Coffees to host this and to first introduce our panelists, who are also contributors of the reports. So if you take a look, you'll see their smiling faces in the report and some really great thoughts that we should all be taking away. So first, Anissa, welcome, Managing Director of Software and Platforms at Accenture. I think we all know Accenture, but Anissa is somebody that we've got to work with who has been so substantial and such an innovator in how we scale and create mentoring and networking, not just for a few people, but for everybody. And it's been so awesome to work with Anissa these last, I guess it's probably been a year, Anissa, that we've been kind of having calls and talking about this. But thanks for joining us and taking this time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of this discussion today.
And next is Diavin Miller, Head of Partner Success at Black Professionals in Tech Network. I think many people are familiar with the work of BPTN, hugely innovative, so many different things happening across North America with almost 50,000 members. So Diavin, thanks for joining us. I know we've got to team up with you at BPTN, but welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Dave. Really, honored to be here. Grateful to be able to share with the panel, and also looking to learn as well throughout the hour. So excited to get going.
Great. So just a few housekeeping notes. So we have about 50 more minutes with our panelists. We have a lot of great questions that have come in over the last few weeks that we've curated, but please do drop your questions in using the chat or the Q&A portion. We also have some polls. So throughout the event, we'll be able to poll our audience and just hear what you're saying, and then use that to continue the conversation with our panelists. And all of you will receive a link to our ebook. It's free, so feel free to share it with anybody. We've got Diavin and Anissa in that, along with about 15 other leaders to help us all think about how we can make and celebrate Black voices, not just today and this month, but year round. So one of the first questions is, and we'll open this up to a poll, but so for everybody that's joined here, how did your organizations recognize Black History Month this year? And so there's a poll that popped up, so feel free to share some of those elements, and then we'll hop in to hear from our panelists as well. So I guess as we're doing the poll, maybe Anissa, you can start and just share kind of how your organization recognized Black History Month this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just thought that I'm not able to vote in the poll, so last. You'll just get to hear from me. Yeah, so we had I think what is a pretty interesting theme, right? So it's can't give up now. Let's leverage our legacy to create a better future for everyone. So that was the overarching theme. And just looking at some of the poll topics, I think we did sort of all of the above, right? You know, the items fell into buckets like cultural, where we did virtual tours of the African American History Museum, for example, or smaller, lesser known local African American history museums in various communities. Most of the efforts were led by our African American Employee Resource Group, both at the national level as well as within each of the cities where we have chapters. You know, lots of fun events like Black History Month trivia, and then I think some really interesting stuff that's so important now. We're still living with COVID, so physical, right? Doing exercising together virtually, right? Having folks lead, hit sessions, doing wellness webinars, right? Making sure that we're taking care of ourselves mentally, putting our money where our mouths are, right? We're doing $100,000 raise for historically Black colleges and universities, with matching coming in from Accenture, to help contribute to the success of students going forward. Lots of career development opportunities, right? Opportunities to hear from our leaders, understand, what it takes to get ahead. And then, as we sort of exit the month and start to lean into Women's Month next, in March, creating opportunities to bring those two together, right? To really explore some of the intersectionality of, what does it mean to be Black? What does it mean to be a Black woman? So that's just sort of a smattering of what we've been doing this month. And I think the overarching theme is just we're here to have fun, and we're here to elevate and make sure that everyone gets to enjoy the experience.
Amazing. And any HIT class is always a great way. I feel like exercise, especially in virtual, is such a good way to build networks as well. I think just to go to, and thanks everyone for submitting those polls. It's great to see some of the different initiatives that have happened. So a recent report from Boston Consulting Group, BCG, shared that 70 to 85%, pretty high number, of open job positions are filled through networking and relationships. Like 70 to 85% of opportunities and jobs through networking and relationships. And because of this, Black Canadians, it was a Canadian study, are 30% less likely to be in the candidate pool. And Diavin, maybe I can, we're gonna launch a poll for this to get the audience engaged, but Diavin, as we go through that poll, at BPTN, so much of your goal is things like mentoring and networking for Black talent working in tech. How does organizations like yours remove the barriers that Black professionals working in tech face by helping them solve this network and relationship gap?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Very interesting question because, the problem is often framed as a lack of supply. So what you hear, and you hear this from some of the most senior executives and leaders in tech and business, and you think, wow, okay, you are really not educated around the issue. It's often framed as a lack of supply. We want to hire Black talent, but we can't find them. We've looked and we can't find them. And you realize that, okay, if I look at the stats, both in Canada and the US, there is more than enough supply. If I look at, computer science graduates in the US, Black computer science graduates in the US for the past, 20 years, every year it's roughly 10% of all graduates are Black identified. So the supply is there, but for some reason, folks aren't getting hired. So fundamentally, this is the cause. It's a networking gap. Most of the hiring that we do, most of the recruiting that we do are through trusted networks. And we don't necessarily even recognize when we're doing it, but that's how we operate as humans. You want to reduce friction, you want to reduce risk. So you talk to the people you know, and they refer the people they know. And so closing that network gap is really essential to the work that we do here at BPTN and making sure that we're bridging that gap between the talent that exists and the opportunities, and the folks who have and control access to those opportunities is very important. So we do that through networking programs that we run for our members. We do it through mentoring programs that we offer to early career Black talent that's in the network. And we really focus on partnering with our corporate partners to enable that they understand that this isn't about supply, it's about who has access and who's allowed into the room. And it's also about what rooms you're walking into and where you are and where you feel comfortable. So it's about normalizing engagement with Black professionals as well, and making sure that folks are widening their horizon in terms of just where they're looking and who they're interacting and engaging with.
Yeah, that's awesome to see the mentoring and networking programs, which of course we're so proud to team up with you on all of those. Anissa, just on your perspective, it's something that I know you've been digging into at Accenture. How can enterprise, there's a lot of people from different enterprise companies, and many of them might have BRGs or ERGs. How can these enterprise companies build up networks for their Black employees? And what have you been doing at Accenture on this front?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing is to make sure you have some sort of an employee resource group for not just your African American employees, all your employees, right? Sort of bringing together different affinity groups and making sure that people have a place to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel connected, courageous. That's some of the language that we use at Accenture, right? Is to create those safe spaces for folks. And so at Accenture, we not only have those employee resource groups in the frame, but we make sure that they have all the support that they need to be able to thrive, right? Make sure that they have the right access to leadership, make sure that they have the right access to to both internal and external resources, to bolster all of our folks, right? And then it's also about creating networks outside. So one of the things that we're doing that I'm really proud of that we launched, I believe a couple of years ago, is around helping Black founders, right, in the tech space raise capital, right? So we're really again kind of putting our money where our mouth is, going out and looking for those organizations to help them get access to capital, right? When you think about all the capital that exists out there in the VC space, I think less than 1% of it goes to Black founders, right? So really getting in there and again, not only putting our money where our mouth is, but providing all of the necessary support that comes with it, all the access to all of the corporate strategic resources that we have, as well as mentoring from so many great leaders in our firm.
Thanks for that. Yeah, and I think what we're seeing so often from organizations is these networking and mentoring programs for Black employees are often very limited and very manual. And we like to go from kind of one and done and make them year-long initiatives. There's so much innovation that organizations need to apply to make sure that those are not biased. And I think, Diavin, to your point, something that really stands true is that if you just kind of leave networks to people's own devices, they start to kind of, birds of a feather flock together, right? And so people start to just network with the people they might be normally exposed to. And we actually have to create the opposite. We need people that look different to have those networks. And so a lot of opportunity for organizations to bridge this network gap. So on a personal note, I know both of you have some great networking and mentoring experiences that have helped you both become and build such incredible careers. Would love to hear just how mentoring and networking has benefited your career, and what any like mentoring programs that you'd be a part of. And maybe, Diavin, we could start with you, and then we'll pass it to Anissa after that.
Sure. I told the story once in one of our forums with our Black professional community here at BPTN, and I was told to stop talking because it came off as a humble brag. So I'm going to try to frame it differently, so it sounds it really resonates, hopefully. But I've only ever applied for one job in my career, and that was my co-op job, my first co-op term in university. And it's hard to tell folks that because folks, looked at me and be like, "What do you mean? You're just really lucky." And what I always say is, nope, I've had a really great network of mentors and sponsors who have helped me move and navigate through my career. So I applied for one job, it was co-op. They invited me back. They invited me back again, and then they hired me. And it's just been progressively getting, different opportunities throughout my career. And I stayed with that company for a very, very long time, ended up leaving, thought, I'm leaving, I'm going to take a break. Someone in my network reached out and said, "Hey, I noticed that you're not at this company anymore. What are you doing? And would you like to come work here?" Ended up moving there. My current role, our founder reached out to me just randomly on LinkedIn to say, "Hey, what's up? Would like to have a chat." And so at each stage of my career, there's been a mentor. They haven't necessarily always been formally identified mentors, but there's been someone who said, "You know what? I see what you're doing here, and I think that you could do this at a different level, in a different part of the organization. I think your skills are applicable over here. Would you like to explore this opportunity?" And so it's just been, one of the things that I try to communicate to folks within the network, and even folks that I mentor now, is the fact that opportunity comes from many different directions. And one of the things we hear a lot as Black professionals is, you got to work twice as hard for half as much. And that's been, kind of stuff that's been ingrained in us as we've been growing up. And it's kind of this expectation that you need to expect less, and you need to settle for less. And that's not true. Leveraging social capital, leveraging networking, leveraging really strong mentors and sponsors will help you to level the playing field. And it's something that we really need to be tapping into.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a great story, by the way, and it's not a humble brag. I'll speak to it in a couple ways, right? So I think, I've been a part of many formal mentoring programs, both as a mentor and as a mentee, right? And so, speaking to being a mentor, it gives me immense personal satisfaction, right? I mean, it is one of the things that, makes me enjoy my job, right? Is the opportunity to mentor not only other employees, folks within my sphere at all levels, right? But also we have a program in place where we mentor diverse small businesses, right? And it's an 18-month program. We do this globally, but really being able to get in and help a small business through, all the many assets that Accenture has, achieve their goals and ambitions it's such a heady rush, right? It's such an amazing thing to be able to do, and to be able to pay that forward, to these businesses. And then, I think internally, just, the personal relationships you get to form, right? I mean, I'm planning to meet a student that I mentored through a student leadership program in Madrid for dinner, right? I mean, and it's, that relationship wouldn't have come about had we not been paired through, pure happenstance, right? Some totally random process to be in a mentoring situation. And then, in instances where I've been mentored, it's felt a little bit serendipitous at times, right? There's that moment when you're sort of scratching your head going, not really sure what I want to do next. And you're just sort of knocking on doors and having chats with people informally, formally. And then, that next door opens, that next door sort of magically opens. But the point is that I have those people to knock on their doors, right? And they're willing to take the time and talk to me and reach out to their networks in turn on my behalf to help think through what might be next, right? Diavin, to your point, based on my skill set, based on my desires, based on, all the hopes and dreams. So just knowing that you've got people who are thinking about you and who are thinking about what's best for you next, both from a mentorship and a sponsorship perspective, is a really compelling draw within an organization.
Amazing. Yeah, so many things to unpack on that. I think in particular, just the value of being a mentor is, we often say the more you teach, the more you learn. And so a lot of times people go, why do I want to spend time in BPTN's Cultivate program mentoring emerging Black professionals? And the more you teach, the more you learn. And we've all got to commit to that. So a lot of really great research that continues to come through. And a recent study from Data Hub reported that 20% of white employees have sponsors, yet only 5% of Black employees do. Only 5%. How can organizations foster mentoring, networking, and sponsorship so that their Black employees can actually, bridge that gap? And when we think about mentoring, networking, and sponsorship, we ask it in that way because networks create mentors and mentors create sponsors, right? And so you have to kind of create that full ecosystem of experience. You can't just assign people to be sponsors and boom, everything's fixed, right? It's a much bigger problem than that has a lot of layers. So Diavin, and there's a poll that we have going while we go through this. So everyone, please, I don't know if the poll just dropped. We meant to launch that poll one more time. But Diavin, would love for you to start first. Can you talk about effective programs that you've seen your corporate partners run? This stat is pretty staggering. What are corporate partners doing when 1 in 20 Black employees have sponsors?
Yeah, one of the things that we hear from partners as we talk to them is hey, we have this leadership development program and it's not generating any Black leaders. So we want to create a Black leadership development program because that's how we're going to fix it. And my question always is, why isn't your leadership program generating Black leaders, and why aren't you looking at solving for that? So, on the positive side, a lot of what our partners have recognized is that the information and the access to the information around sponsorship and what it actually means and how it differs from, mentorship is not democratized within the organization. It's usually held, the information and the access is usually held by very few people. It's almost like a secret in terms of, who gets tapped on the shoulder and told to go over there to that room where you get, all the special goodies and the special treats, right? And so once you democratize the information and once you make it available to everyone to say, here's how you get into leadership. Here's how you navigate. These are the paths. This is what it looks like. Here are the resources within the organization to help you. Suddenly, folks are like, oh, okay. I didn't know that existed. No one has ever, I've been here for decades. No one's ever told me about this. And, I just thought you had to kind of luck into it. But there's a process and it's fairly structured usually. It's just informal and it's just based on, some kind of tribal knowledge that, the folks who've been successful look at people, and usually it's people who look like them, and tap them on the shoulders to bring them into the club. So once you open the doors and once you make that information available, suddenly all kinds of folks can navigate through it. And so, there are a lot of programs that we've seen out there from, peer mentoring for folks who are just coming into the organization to, looking at sponsors and thinking, you know what, my experience navigating into leadership is not going to be the same as, a Black woman, is not going to be the same as someone with a disability. And I need to, train my sponsors to say, hey, as you're going out and you're, developing these emerging leaders, you need to kind of step outside yourself and you need to not center your own experience, because, telling a woman to walk into a meeting, grab the bull by the horns and take center stage and, speak with a loud authoritative voice may not translate so well for her as it did for you as a man. So don't center yourself. Think of their experiences. Make sure you have a really good understanding of the challenges they need to overcome. Make sure you understand how they're going to be perceived when they go into rooms and, take certain actions, and how that may be different from your experience, and that you're setting them up for success and you're introducing them to the right people and making sure they get access to the right opportunities. And so that's what we see really working with our partners when they take those approaches. Democratize the information and educate the sponsors and make sure that they're actually serving the folks they're sponsoring rather than just trying to replicate themselves into leadership.
That's couldn't agree more. I think the word democratizing really stands out. When we built 10,000 Coffees, our goal, which so much has changed, but one thing that has stayed the same is our vision is democratize opportunity. And that when you can create open access to these experiences, whether it's networking or mentoring or sponsorship or onboarding programs, like the full informal experiences, that's when you democratize opportunity. But so often these relationships are hidden, or people, think like themselves and say, well, why don't you just go build your network? And they don't think about all of the barriers that people would face when, potentially they don't look like everybody on their team and have that same opportunity.
Hey, Dave, if I might, I think one of the other things that's super important, I think the reality is, especially, in a lot of large companies, you are not going to see the same level of representation, right? In many of them, so as an African American, when I look up, right, when I think through the people who've been, really seminal in my journey, very few of them have been, have looked like me, right? That's just sort of the reality. So I think it's also, I love the democratization term, but I also think it's about making sure that, we're encouraging people to look everywhere, right? Leave sort of no stone unturned in your quest for, in your quest for mentors, in your quest for sponsorship. And I think, I've been giving a lot of thought to this, as we've been working with you and your team, Dave. And I love to see it start at the beginning, right? How do you explain to people, how do I navigate this company, right, day one from onboarding? And I see a lot of people who are not shy at all about dropping time on my calendar, right, to sort of be like, hey, I'm new, I want to meet you. And the good news is, they do look like me, but it's sort of like, don't just reach out to me because I look like you. Make sure that you're broadening that, right? I mean, the reality is that, the bulk of people in senior leadership positions don't look like me in my company, right? Or in the, the broader corporate world. So you've got to make sure that you're doing that reach out to everyone. And then, those people need to make sure that they've got the right sort of allyship, right? And instincts to be supportive of everyone.
And just to double click on that, Anissa, like I think, for someone like you, you're in technology, you're at one of the most prestigious firms in the world, and you look up and you don't see people that look like you, and you're breaking so much ground. What message do you have for leaders in how they have to truly think and invest in networking and mentoring because of that? Because, a lot of those leaders probably look more like me, right? And so they don't think, everyone thinks from the lens of what they went through. So what advice and actions should these leadership teams be investing in thinking about given that?
Yeah, look, I mean, many, right? But I think, one is really around empathy, right? I mean, it's about, understanding that not everyone, to your point, not everyone has the secret decoder ring. Not everyone went to the same university, the same prep school, the same, has the same background in any way, shape, or form. So making sure that you're really, really, truly open to, you know, to the worldviews and the experiences and the backgrounds of everyone, right? And what, you know, what pitfalls and gaps there may be within that. You know, I think we are big on measurement, shockingly enough, right? But one of the things that you know, that I would ask for everyone to do is to make sure that, you know, when you're signing up for, because we do, every single person has to sign up for, you know, an inclusion and diversity, a D&I related goal, right? As part of their personal accountability for the year. Make sure it's not a check the box activity, right? Make sure that you are really, you know, going into it with your whole heart. You know, make sure that, you know, you're reaching back out to that person that you may have offered to sponsor or mentor, and, you know, are they getting out of it what, you know, what they need? Are they, you know, are you all committed to shared principles, shared goals, shared outcomes in all of that, right? It can't just be somebody told me I needed to do this so that I would get my bonus this year, and so I'm doing it, right? It needs to be really meaningful to you.
So we just saw some headlines with some of the big tech companies going live with DE&I goals being a part of everyone's scorecard and compensation being tied to it. Diavin, maybe I'll start with you and then I'll pass to Anissa. For everybody that's watching this, what are the 2 or 3 things that are real items they should be signing up for, so that when they put that in their performance review next year, it's real change and it's not just, you know, like, what are some of the things that they should actually consider dropping in there as commitments?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to be educated about why are D&I goals part of your strategic objectives for the year, and why are there KPIs tied to them, and why is your compensation then tied to those KPIs? Because if you don't understand that, you're going to be coming from the position of, okay, I just need to check these boxes, and so everything or a lot of what you do is going to be performative, and you actually could end up damaging the work and the outcomes that your firm's trying to accomplish. So if you're including these targets, these metrics, make sure that your leaders understand why. And the biggest thing is, I think it's McKinsey that does a study every 4 to 5 years that talks about the fact that companies that have gender and ethno-racial diversity in their leadership teams are something like 35% more likely to outperform their competitors in their sector. And you know, on all kinds of different levels, whether it be from profitability to entering new markets to innovation, et cetera. And so there is a huge benefit that comes from having a diverse set of experiences, a diverse set of voices, and just diverse ways of looking at the world in those rooms when decisions are being made, when ideas are being generated. And that's what you want your executives to be fostering within your company. That's what you want your leaders to be trying to get to, is that bottom line benefit. Because yes, you can add lots of diversity to your company, but if folks don't feel like they're included, if folks don't understand what you need to do to make someone feel comfortable, because yeah, I may show up here as a Black professional, I may show up here as a queer man, but if I don't feel like my voice is going to be heard, if I feel like I'm going to be belittled, if I feel I'm going to be ignored or talked over, then my willingness to contribute and participate is not going to be there, right? So it's not just about being in the room, it's about being fully included. And so executives have to understand that, and they have to understand the link to profitability and how their companies are going to be moving forward in the future in order to really make impactful changes. So regardless of what metric you throw on the table, make sure that folks understand the why. And your metrics are going to be, you know, dependent on your business, but it has to be about, you know, what are we trying to achieve, and start with inclusion. Don't just start by adding a bunch of diverse people and thinking that that's going to solve the problem. Make sure that your environment is one where they feel they can participate and contribute.
Yeah, it's the inclusion elements. And this is just one, because I know you have a ton of ideas on this, but I think just to echo what you mentioned, like the business case is clear. Like it creates better companies, better teams, more innovation. And so just to double click on that for everyone here, anytime you hear people, well, I don't know if I have time to mentor Black employees or otherwise. If you're a business, this drives the business, and it's also just the right thing to do. And so we can't lose sight of that. Anissa, over to you.
Yeah, no, all I was going to say, I think that was spot on what Diavin was saying. But I think the other thing that's so important is, so it's the education piece, but it's grounding it in, in facts, right? And so one of the things that I think we do really well are, we go out and we ask our people what they need, right? And we ask our people what, how they're feeling, right? Because to your point, right? If I do happen to look around and go, oh, okay, well, there are a lot of people who look like me. You still may not feel actually included, right? You still may not have that sense of belonging. And that, for me, is really the holy grail, right? It's, it's sort of, for me, it's sort of the diversity piece is math, right? And you can get there with resources, you can get there, people can get there. And as Diavin said, the supply is there. It's about keeping those people once they come in. We talked about the referral network, right? I mean, if you've got those Black and brown employees in your organization, how do you make sure that they want to reach out and bring in people from their network, right? I mean, that's how this sort of chain grows and builds and becomes perpetuated. So I think making sure that we use Gallup, right? We leverage Gallup there's some of their survey tools to make sure that we're asking those questions to really understand what sense of belonging do people have, and if they don't, what do we need to do about it? And again, going and asking them, right? Putting on, I think, big programs that have no grounding in reality or no grounding in what's going to actually change the culture, change the dial, is purely performative and isn't going to have the desired outcome that you want.
Yeah, and in this, I think would love to just hear from you. You have such a large organization. What are the 2 or 3 kind of great goals or commitments that people can make to drive those DE&I goals? Again, what we don't want is people just to sign up for something that doesn't really, that checks the box. But now that we see organizations having DE&I goals in their leadership components of their scorecards, what are some of the 2 or 3 things that could actually, everyone signed up for this, it would actually create those inclusion moments?
Yeah, look, I think, everyone signing up to take on a mentee, right, who frankly doesn't look like them, doesn't have the same background, right, is something that I'm really starting to explore as well, right? We do work in places like, countries like India, right, where you're not going to have the same sort of, Black, white issue, but there are other dimensions, right? Are you looking at someone who's from a different background, who's from an underrepresented background, right? Who's from a different, social, economic, whatever, sort of class than yourself. So really thinking about it in those terms. So it's really reaching out to bring someone along with you. When you've got an open role, when you've got an open position, right? Not just sort of looking immediately to the left and immediately to the right, but reaching out even further afield. And it's something that I talk about within our leadership team. It's let's be really intentional about our staffing, right? Yes, we're always in a hurry to fill the role. Yes, we're always in a hurry to find the right candidate. But let's take a beat, right? Let's think through, and let's do that intentionally through succession planning, right? Let's understand, where are we against the numbers, right? Because there are numbers, there are targets. Where are we against those targets? And then, let's go out and let's make sure that we are doing everything we can to source the right candidate who's bringing additional diversity, the right kind of diversity to our team.
It goes full circle, right, to what you said, is when people are staffing and people are filling roles, everyone kind of looks around them and says, oh, that's who I go with. And so we often say networks have to be a vitamin and not an antibiotic. So you have to kind of build networks every day forever. And so for everyone on here, if you're not thinking about meeting people who don't look like you all the time, then yeah, of course, when you staff, you're just going to go to who you went. It's not an antibiotic. You just pop and you're better, right? So we have to think about doing that year round. And I think the challenge for executive sponsors of diversity networks and for anyone on diversity teams, think about, you probably have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of employees that need tools to give them that vitamin that diversifies their networks year round. And I can promise you, and would love to hear from our panelists if you like how you see this, is if you leave it to people on their own for not necessarily a bad reason, people don't do it. They don't diversify their network with people that are different than them. And maybe Diavin, just knowing that you've seen so many different networking programs, is that true? Like, how are you seeing that, where leaving people to their own versus creating programs? Why does that matter?
Yeah, I think I'm an introvert. And so I see people and my first instinct is to go in the other direction, right? That's just how I am, and it's how I move through the world. But I understand fundamentally that there are disadvantages to that. And so, how do I make sure that I'm meeting folks who either I can create opportunity for, or who can create opportunity for me, because that's going to be an integral part of how my career is going to progress. It's going to be an integral part in terms of the kind of friendships I'm going to develop. Right? It's going to be an integral part of the quality of my life experience, my lived experience. So understanding that, and I think executives really figuring that out and thinking about just human motivation and what we're going to have time for in the day. There are going to be urgent issues and there are going to be emergencies, and chances are networking is not going to be an emergency item on your list as you're going through the day, right? So how do you make it easy? How do you reduce the friction? How do you create things where it just kind of happens as a, just a regular part of your routine? And how do you normalize that is the question. And how do you create a culture where networking is encouraged and seen as entrepreneurial and seen as, one of these desired behaviors that you want your folks to be demonstrating? And so when you start to think of, what do you do there? Then you start to think about, okay, what are solutions that are out there, and what are networks that are out there that we can tap into and that we can make available to our folks. And so, things like the work that 10,000 Coffees is doing, things like our new network OBSIDI that we just launched, all of those, and just kind of highlighting, areas where folks can find and connect with people are ways that you help to reduce that friction and kind of do the homework for folks and take those excuses away.
Yeah, Anissa, I'll pass it to you because I'm sure there's some sparks flying on how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you and I have been having this conversation for a while, and I'm so like I'm so jazzed about it. That was a lame thing to say, but in part because, right, I mean, I feel like, and we've been talking about the 10,000 Coffees solution, but it really is an easy button. Right. It really is an easy button to make sure. I mean, a lot of, what we're hoping to enable through the platform, we've tried to do manually, right? We've tried to create those moments for people manually, and it's incredibly arduous, right? But I mean, being able to, what we know our people want is they want to know their leaders. They want to hear from their leaders, right? I was on a call earlier today. We have a weekly series called Leader Fever, right? So I was on, taking questions, fielding questions on, everything from, my work to my travel preferences and all that good stuff, but creating those moments where people have access to me, right? And so, I'm getting LinkedIn pings, right? I'm getting, items in my inbox. That's 1 week, right? That's 1 week where people have access to me. Putting in, using technology, right? We're technologists here, using technology to enable that in a more robust manner, right? Taking the guesswork out of it, taking the randomness out of it, taking the, oh, there's an email that got buried. I mean, the number of things that come through, right? That, somebody's like, hey, I want to meet you. If it's coming through and it's like, oh, I know that this is a networking opportunity, right? It's almost like, how you use your Outlook to like flag certain things. Having that sort of, big red flashing sign and having that signposting, I think is going to be just so incredibly important, right? So incredibly important. And everyone wants it, right? I think everyone wants it. I think that everyone realizes that their responsibility, and one of our core values is, is sort of leaving this place a better, better than the way that we found it, right? It's that sort of stakeholder the stakeholder management, right? The stewardship. And I think that this is such a huge component of, being a good steward of our company and of our people. And again, taking making it easy. Like, hey, you kind of can't say no, right? If someone's really serving it up on a plate to you.
Yeah, I think making it easy and removing the bias, like a caution for people that are leveraging manual programs, is anything that's manual has bias in it, and no matter what. And on the same joke, and if you don't create the right technology solutions, like AI and ML can also have a lot of bias where it creates similarities. And so a big aspect of the 10,000 Coffees platform has been to remove all bias from that easy button, Anissa, that you had mentioned. So like, we're now working with so many organizations where we create these network modules and mentoring modules so that everyone can one-click opt in and guide them through what that structured experience is, that at the end of the year, they have that diversified network. And just to remove the uncertainty and the bias from that whole equation, because to your point, everybody does want this, and how they get it really matters, so that they're getting something that's inclusive and also outcome driven. So something that, and we'll open up another poll question for this one, but allyship was dictionary.com's word of the year. And I think allyship is something that we all, for me, is something that I have to work on all the time to learn about how I can be a better ally and sponsor and support when it comes to the Black professionals in my life. What does being an ally truly mean? And how do companies foster like true allyship? A lot of people put stickers on their laptops and it's like, okay, well, now we're an ally. That's not being an ally. So what does it truly mean? And how do organizations actually cultivate that allyship? And maybe Anissa, we'll start with you and then pass to Diavin next.
Yeah, let me just come off mute. Yeah, no, look, I completely agree with you, right? I mean, I think the stickers and all that good stuff are, it just kind of comes across as being a bit performative. For me, it really starts with listening, right? And I think we've all been, there was this, George Floyd was a giant jolt to the collective, right? Just the collective, full stop. And I think everyone's wanted to sort of jump in and go, how can I be better? How can I do better, right? And so I think it's really understanding that, you've got a position of privilege, right? Certainly for when you're looking at, at sort of, people who are not of color, who are not a minority in any way, you are sort of sitting in this world from a position of privilege. Understanding that, and then working to make sure that you are using that privilege for good, right? For good, to make sure that you're and it's small. I think it's small moments, right? It's stepping in when you hear, the woman in a meeting constantly be spoken over, right? It is stepping in when you're in a room full of people who look like you, who are using terrible language, right? Who are not thinking about things in the right way, and putting yourself, sort of in the middle of that to go, stop, right? This is not right. This is not right. This is not okay. It is being a shoulder, right? It's reaching out to folks and asking them, how are you doing? When the bad things happen, it's being there. One of the things that we've really started to lean into is making sure that we're having these safe space forums, right? And we just hosted one with our mental health ally group, as well as our social justice employee resource group, and it was just an opportunity. There's a lot, right? And it was just an opportunity to have people come on and be able to share. And there was this sort of kindred, this sort of kindred spirit, but also this collective unburdening, right? It was vast array of people sort of on the call. But for me, that's allyship, right? It's the act of listening. It's the act of showing empathy and compassion, and then taking those steps to show that I've got you, right? I've got your back, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you feel seen, you feel safe, you feel connected, and you feel courageous in your journey in life.
I don't know that there's much left to say after that. It is, so that was really, I think, really great, really deep, and really connected, resonated with me on so many levels. One of the things that I'd like to add, however, is that, you know what, allyship requires, well, first of all, allyship it's a verb. It's being an ally is a verb. It's not a noun, so it's not a destination. It's something you're always working through. And one of the things that we talk to folks about in our partner organizations is that allyship requires real vulnerability. It requires you to admit that you may not know stuff. You may not be familiar with terms. You may not be familiar with experiences, that you can still make mistakes, even though you're an ally. You may even be a sponsor of an ERG, right? And you're still going to have, those foot and mouth moments, right? But it's about what you do next. And it's about how you respond when someone says, hey, this is an issue, it requires your attention. It may be something that you've done, it may be something that someone else has done that you weren't aware of. And it's about how you act in those moments. Do you, focus on what you think the intent is versus the impact? Do you admit that, okay, yep, that was an error, and here's how we're going to move forward to correct it and make sure that it doesn't happen again? Those are all, for me, hallmarks of allyship. And so it's almost a frame of mind that you need to enter and work really hard to stay in, because our natural reaction is to think, yes, I've achieved something, and it's like a video game. I got the badge and now I'm at the next level, so I'm all good forever. And whenever someone comes to tell you that something's going on, whether with you or with someone else, to say, well, yeah, but that's not what I meant, or that's not what they meant, and this is really where we're trying to get to, rather than focusing on what's happening in that moment and not centering yourself in your feelings. So it's tough, and it requires active participation. And so, yeah, that would be hallmarks for me in terms of what it means to truly be an ally and an aware ally.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think we often use, and Anissa talked about some HIIT classes and fitness classes at the top. I'll use a health analogy where allyship and inclusion is very much like being healthy. Like, you don't just reach a point and you never have to be healthy again because you already reached it. It's something that you have to kind of think about every single day and create daily practices forever to be healthy. And it's the same thing with allyship and sponsorship and mentoring. You don't all of a sudden hit that milestone like Diavin, you mentioned. It's something where you're going to be practicing this forever. And so Diavin, BPTN announced Cultivate, that's matching Black professionals who are kind of emerging leaders, and it's powered by 10,000 copies matching algorithm and mentoring modules. Would love for you to just share kind of how the partnership started and some of the information on this program.
Yeah, thanks for that. So Cultivate's been running for a few years now, and it was really one of these things that we started because we saw the need within the community. Like, there are over 50,000 Black professionals in North America who are part of BPTN and our OBSIDI network, and we see the need for mentoring. We see folks asking, how can I learn? How can I grow my career? How can I connect to other professionals? So we created the program. But it was really manual, and it was us going in and saying, okay, you're working in this area. I see someone over here who's working in this other area, and I think you would be a good match. And I think the levels line up. So, let me make that introduction. Let me follow up with you and make sure that you're talking to each other. And what we quickly realized is that, we're an organization of just around 50 people. So for us, running that and keeping it live and driving that engagement was really hard slogging. And so it was really going out and saying, what are solutions that are out there that can reduce that friction and, as much as possible, bring some level of automation to this? Because, of course, we are the Black Professionals in Tech Network. So what's the tech solution, kids? So, and that's where we ended up landing on 10,000 coffees. And I have to say that just the feedback from the participants. We're just starting to launch Cultivate for this year, but we've also launched our executive networking on the 10,000 Coffees platform. And just the feedback from folks in terms of the ease with which they can connect, the fact that it's based on their schedule, it's what's good for them rather than us having set times when you have to show up. That's made a world of difference from an experiential perspective. And we're already getting rave reviews on the executive networking portion of the program. So we know that Cultivate is going to be wonderful. And Cultivate has been a success in spite of the manual struggles. Folks have been getting jobs. Folks have built really strong relationships with their mentors. In fact, I think it was something like 40% of the mentors in the program kept meeting with their mentees after the end of the program. So that just shows you the strength of the relationship. And we know that that's just going to balloon and really grow as we move forward on the 10KC platform.
Yeah, we could not be more excited to launch that. And I think it's another interesting point, right? Like, it's executive networking, knowing that executives need this as much as the early professional mentoring. And that's why when organizations think of what's the holistic ecosystem, it's not just hey, go build your network and find a mentor. And I think just as a wrapping comment and looking at some of the poll data, it looks like generally less than 20% of organizations really have deliberate programming like the one that Diavin just described. And so we're leaving it to chance and to bias. And so with that, I think the call to action for everybody as we wrap this is, let's think of how we can not just do our really great events throughout February, which are important, but how do we think about those sustainment and those democratized opportunities that can happen year round. And I think if for leaders, if you can't measure what percentage of all of your Black employees have mentors and networks, what gets measured gets done. And so if it's not being measured, it's not getting done. And so we've got to figure out ways to not just help that, the chosen few, but all employees get those networks and relationships, because if it's left to chance, it's just not going to happen. And so somehow we're at time. And so I have to say a really big thank you and also a congratulations to both of you for all that you've accomplished. You're launching programs, you're building things on that are just helping so many people grow professionally, to be allies, and so much more. So thanks for joining us. And for everyone that joined, thanks for attending. And thanks for taking the first step in making this a year-long activity for us to share and celebrate Black voices in our world. And so look up for the ebook, share feedback, let us know what you think, pass it along to your colleagues, and let's, it starts with us to figure out how we can not just celebrate today and this month, but year round. So thanks to the panelists, and looking forward to our continued partnership.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. This has been great.